Thank you, Mr. President. 2 weeks ago, I was privileged to be with Mr. Dole and others in this House in Tampa, where Mitt Romney told the Republican National Convention, he said, "I wish President Obama had succeeded because I want America to succeed," but his promises gave way to disappointment and division. President Barroso, my group supported you for a second term. We wanted you to succeed in shaping a positive agenda for reform of the EU. And in some areas, such as international trade, such as the single market, your Commission has made some progress, which we welcome, and we welcome your further announcements today of progress on the single market. But overall, I have to say, we are very disappointed. Rather than seeing European renewal, as you yet again promised last year, all we have seen is the same old, tired approach. More Europe rather than better Europe. Exactly 2 years ago, the main initiative to emerge from your State of the Union speech was project bonds. 2 years on, nothing's happened. They are merely at a pilot phase. Last year, your big idea was an EU-wide financial transactions tax, and today, thankfully, that idea is dead in the water. This year, we have a banking union. We have more treaty change, the knee-jerk reflex of the European elite to every crisis. You told us today we have the power to shape the world. Mr. Barroso, can I suggest that first of all you concentrate on solving the problems of Europe before you worry about shaping the rest of the world? And so far, the response to the Eurozone crisis has been characterised by seeking short-term sticking plaster solutions and long-term institutional navel-gazing, and listening to you today, it looks as though that's going to continue. Bailouts, ECB Ponzi schemes have enabled you to kick the infamous can even further down the road. And last week's ECB decision to buy up bonds may be, as some members have said, a useful stopgap, but it is in no sense a solution. Risks have simply been transferred from one balance sheet to another. And the essential nonsense of this current approach was, for me, brilliantly illustrated over the summer. If you remember, Greece had to repay a €5 billion loan to the ECB. So to do this, they issued new short-term bonds. All of these bonds were bought by Greek banks. Those Greek banks are, of course, all technically bust. So where did they get the money from? They borrowed it from the ECB to pay the Greek state, who then gave it back to the ECB again. Mr. President, this is exactly the kind of financial chicanery which caused the economic crisis in the first place. And now you want us to have another long drawn-out academic debate about more treaty change, about a banking union. And we will scrutinise your proposals very carefully to make sure that they respect the rights of those member states that thankfully chose not to join the euro, and we wish to maintain the integrity of the single market and ensure that your proposals don't damage that market. And the euro was, of course, always a political project from the start. I well remember the many debates in this House we had about it, where the political symbolism was much more important than the economic reality, and I bet many of you are regretting that now. Well, President, we are now in an economic crisis, and it will be solved with economic solutions by confronting some fairly stark economic truths. It is a reality, and members have referred to this, Mr. Barroso referred to this, that some Eurozone countries are less competitive than others. For them, the euro is acting like a straitjacket, preventing the currency devaluation that would give them time to put in place longer-term reforms. And to illustrate how urgent the problem is, I agree with Mr. Swoboda. A new report from the ILO shows that Spain now has the highest documented unemployment rate in the world. Greece, unfortunately, comes second. This is misery on an epic scale in those countries, and we really should do something about it. So let's be honest about it. Let's be honest with ourselves. The only way that the euro can be made to work with 17 members is if the people of Germany, the people of Netherlands, the people of Finland are prepared to transfer cash, not loans, cash from their taxpayers' pockets in order to bridge the competitiveness gap. Now, I don't think that is ever going to happen. And frankly, I think the people of those countries deserve our understanding of why that is not possible. So surely the only other alternative is for some countries to leave the euro, to devalue their currencies, and for us to support them as they find the right policies that will return them to sustainable public spending and growth in the long term. The euro area needs to be restructured. And I do not say that with delight, Mr Barroso. I say it because I think it is the only realistic course of action that will deliver for people who are desperate for a solution. President, the EU faces a crisis of leadership. Mr Barroso told us so himself last year in his State of the Union address. And I agree with him in that particular case. The EU does face a crisis of leadership. It needs a leadership that faces the economic reality of the euro crisis and doesn't keep avoiding the problem. We need new leadership that respects our nation states as building blocks of democracy, which should be supported and not undermined. We take away people's right to control their destiny through the ballot box at our peril. Already frustrated, angry and fearful people are toying with extremist forces, and the alarm bells should be ringing. On that point, and that point alone, I agree with Mr Cohn-Bendit. We need a new leadership who will tackle Europe's fundamental competitiveness crisis in the wider global economy, and who will pursue a new direction to relaunch growth, along the lines outlined by 12 EU Prime Ministers in their letter in February. President, in America, Governor Romney has set out a plan for how he would renew America by returning it to a land of personal ambition, enterprise and freedom. In the EU, we come from the same traditions, and we are at our best when government is small, when markets are free and when the people exercise control over their government. Mr Barroso, I still hope that as you prepare your work programme for next year, it is not too late for you to shake off the policies of the past and to champion genuine reform of the EU so that it can become relevant to today's reality and help us to succeed in facing the difficult years ahead. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr Chairman. Mr Barroso, I understand that some of the Brussels press corps and the Twitter sphere were less than enraptured by your speech. In fact, many of them were playing Barroso buzzword bingo during its delivery. Now, I wonder if anybody can guess what the winning line was. What did he say the most? Let's be frank, you said 5 or 6 times during your speech. That was the winning line. Well, let us be frank with you. You really offered us nothing new today, did you? You offered us the same old, tired solutions, that the answer to all of our problems is more Europe. Not better Europe, not more efficient Europe, just more Europe. And I say I welcome the debate. Table your proposals. Let's have the debate about whether we want more Europe, whether we want less Europe, whether we want more power to the centre or more back to member states. And I'll tell you something even more radical. Let's have that debate, let's reach the conclusions, and then let's ask the people in our member states in referenda what they think of the solutions offered. And then let's do something even more radical, and let's take notice this time of what they say, if in fact they reject your solutions. Let me give you another quote from indeed a member of the EPP, from Mr Daul's party, from Jose Maria Aznar, who said over the weekend that the drive for full fiscal and political union is deeply misguided. He said a United States of Europe is an impossible idea. It is a very serious mistake to try to destroy nation states. You cannot go against the cultural beliefs of the people and the forces of history. And I think he was right in what he said there. Many people in this chamber, many of the leaders that have spoken, are stuck in the 1950s, in the old mantra of what should be done. All except Mr Cohn-Bendit, of course. He's still stuck on the barricades in 1968. But they offer the tired solutions of the past. We need to reform the EU. We need to look forward to what the EU should offer us in the 21st century, and that should be less Europe, a more competitive Europe and more competitive economies. Thank you, Chairman.